everyone, this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make these really cute I'm going to call it Tulip Tassel Necklace and Earring Sets. Now we're going to be using the newest treasure bag, the Autumn Showcase, Sunrise and Sunset were the two selections of colors. However, this is a techniques video, as are all of the treasure bag videos. You can do this technique with beads that you can find in your own stash. So you can follow along if you would like. Do not feel left out. Let's go ahead and look and see exactly what we're going to be using to create this project. Okay, so let's go over what we are going to need for this particular project today. Now, we are going to be using beads found in the newest treasure bags Autumn Showcase. There were two color selections, Sunset and Sunrise. I'm going to design this, well, I've already designed it. I'm going to make this tutorial with the Sunrise treasure bag. I've already designed it with the Sunset, so you can see what the colors look like in the Sunset here with the one I've already designed. I'm going to show you the beads we're going to use from both bags regardless. So we're going to be making a set of earrings and a necklace. Let's look at what it takes. So from the treasure bag, things that are mutual to both bags, this is what you're going to need. You have in both bags 8 of these bead caps. You'll be using one regardless of the bag that you have. You'll also be using one of the bronze tone toggle clasps. Adding to the treasure bag, we are going to need a couple of ear wires. This is antique bronze tone ear wire. We're also going to add 2 bead caps. Now this is for the earrings, and I do have some on my website if you would like to have a bag of them. They're really nice with this particular bag. They go really well, so I've been using them, and it might help to have some, or you can use whatever you would like from your stash. Or when you make the earring, you do not necessarily have to have a bead cap. You can just go up into the ear wire without the bead cap, so you don't have to have them. Then we're going to use one piece of wire. This is 20 gauge wire, and this is what I've used. It's Bead Smith, and I'm going to use about 4.5 inches. I believe that is what I've cut. So you'll need one piece of 20 gauge wire cut 4.5 inches, and then we are going to use 11/0 seed beads in 2 colors. So we have got galvanized permanent finish starlight in one color, and then we have the antique bronze in the other color of 11/0. Then in 8/0s, we have the antique bronze. So you're going to need 8/0 and 2 colors of 11/0s. Then for the beads from the bag, we are going to be using these little tulip beads. Now in the Sunrise, they're this olive color. In the Sunset, they are this golden color. Then we are going to use the drop beads in both bags. So in the Sunrise, you have this really long, nice strand. You also do in the Sunset. The one I show you is going to look shorter simply because I've already designed my necklace with it. So we're going to use the gold drop beads in the Sunrise, and in the Sunset it's burley wood, which is like a peachy brown tone. So you'll be using these for your Sunset bag. Then we're going to use the electroplated lantern beads, and in the Sunrise it's this really shiny, pretty, bright golden color. In the Sunset, it's more of a peachy, darker golden color. So you'll be using the strand in the Sunset that is this color. Then I believe that's it for the beads. So then we are going to make a tassel, and we're going to use thread for the tassel. So we will need Fireline 6-pound, and I'm using the crystal color. You could certainly use the smoke color if you would like. I'm using a size 12 beading needle to make my tassel, and then I'm going to use some soft flex beading wire to do the necklace portion that will put the tassel on. So this is medium, and I kind of pulled the tag aside so I could see that it was medium for sure. And then it's 0.019 inch in diameter, or 0.48 millimeter. That's just to give you kind of an idea of what size I'm using. You could probably get away with most any size to do this unless it's a really big diameter. Then we will be using 2 crimp tubes. So I've got Beadalon size 2 in the gold tone crimp tubes. And that is what you're going to need for this project. So go ahead and gather your things together and let's get started. Okay, so we are going to start by making a component to put our tassel on. And we're going to use our piece of wire. You can see I have 4.5 inches cut of wire here. I'm going to go 1.5 inches down and pick up that wire, just like that. I have flat nose pliers here, and I'm just going to bend this wire straight over in a right angle, just like this. Then I'm going to grab a pair of round nose pliers, and I'm going to place my round nose pliers right into that bend. And if you notice, my hand is up and down like this. And then I am going a little ways down on my plier because I want it to be a decent size of a loop that I'm creating. So I'm about not quite halfway down here. And then I'm going to bring the wire that's sticking out over the top of the plier. Then I'm going to turn my wrist, and as I do that, I'm going to draw the wire underneath the plier. And now, as I've turned my wrist, my pliers are like parallel to the bead mat. Now I'm going to take my pliers out, and I have a loop that looks like this. I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers. I'm going to place it on that loop. I'm going to switch to my left hand. As I do that, I've turned my wire over, so now the excess piece is underneath the long piece, and I'm going to begin to turn a couple of coils around the longer length of wire. So I'm just going to very gently turn 3 coils. And then once I've done that, I'm going to get my flush cutters. I'm going to cut very close to the wire here and cut that off. I'll tuck that in a little bit with my little crimping type pliers here. And it doesn't have to be perfect because this is going to be in the bead cap, but just tuck it down a little bit like that. And this is what you should have. Now I'm going to straighten my loop, straighten my wire, and I am then going to grab my beading needle. Now I have put onto my beading needle about 4 feet of thread, which may be a little too much, but I want to make sure I have plenty of thread here. So now I am going to take my beading thread and I'm going to put it through the loop. And I'm going to leave myself a little decent sized tail here so that I can tie a knot around this loop. So I'm just going to take the tail hanging out and the working thread and tie a knot. And then I'm going to do that one more time, just to make sure I have a nice secure knot. And then my excess I'm going to cut down just a little bit because I left a little more than I truly need to leave here. So this is what I have now. And I'm just going to push that little excess piece kind of up out of my way. I'm going to draw this knot down to the middle. And now we are going to start making a tassel. We are going to begin with 6 bronze 11-0 seed beads. So we're going to pick up 6 11-0s. And then we're going to pick up 6 more 11-0s in the gold color. You can use all one color if you'd like. I just kind of like the way this looks. So I'm using 2. And I've picked up 6. Now I'm going to pick up, I have to look at my design, sorry. I'm going to pick up one of my drop beads. Now I have put out 7 drops and 7 flowers because I know that's what I'm going to use for my tassel. I'm going to grab one of my drops. Come on. And I'm doing it from the narrow side. I'm picking up the narrow side and coming out the wider side of the drop. I'm going to pull this down to my piece. And then I am going to pick up an 8-0 seed bead and one of my flowers, and then an 11-0 seed bead, and I'm using the bronze colored 11-0. So this is what I have, and I'm going to bring this down to the drop. Now I have to go around the 11-0 and back up through all of these beads to make my tassel. So let's get in a little closer. Let me rearrange my camera just a little so I stay in frame. Come on, stay there. And now I'm just going to go around the 11-0 into the flower, into the 8-0 and the drop, and then I'm going to go up all of these seed beads. Make sure you do not miss any of them. You go through all of them. And then I'm going to direct my needle through the loop, just like this, and I'm going to pull that needle through nice and slowly and draw the 11-0 up to the bottom of the flower. Now I have to arrange my tassel so that it sits right where I want it to, and I want it to sit in the center here. Then I'm going to make sure I have no slack, but I don't want to pull this so tight that my beads buckle. Now I am going to go under this loop right next to this tassel and ignore this tail here and just go up around. I'm holding the thread between my finger and the loop so that I can slide it into a nice little loop here and then go through it and tie a knot around the wire loop. Now that secures this into place. We're going to be putting little knots in here, not only to secure it, but also to position things where we want them. So I don't know if I pulled, yeah, I got that tight. Okay, so now I'm coming out of my loop after tying the knot, and I am going to pick up this time 4, I believe, yes, I'm going to pick up, I'm sorry guys, I'm trying to remember exactly how I did this. Yes, I am going to pick up 4 11-0 seed beads in the bronze and 4 11-0 seed beads in the gold on my needle this time, because I want to make my next tassel a little shorter. So I'm going to pick up 4, and then I'm going to pick up a drop from the narrow side and drop this down. I'm going to pick up an 8-0 seed bead, and then I'm going to pick up a flower, my little tulip, and then I'm going to pick up an 11-0. So I've got an 8-0, a tulip, and an 11-0, and I'm going to drop this down And now I'm going to, and I've positioned it right next to the first one that I've done. Now I'm going to go back around that 11-0, up through the tulip. So just ignore the 11-0 on the end there, and back up through all of these beads. And then I'm going to go into the wire loop like this. I'm going to pull this through and keep pulling until that 11-0 draws up and everything is nice and neat. Now, I turned it over, so let me turn it back. Now I'm going to position this tassel right where I want it. Make sure there's no slack, my beads aren't bunched, and then I'm going to go underneath the tassel, or underneath the loop of the wire, excuse me, and pull a loop, and then go through the loop and tie a knot down on that wire. Make sure that you tighten everything so there's no slack, and then adjust your beads so they aren't bunched. Now, we've gone on this side of our original dangle here, so we're going to go on the other side of the original. So we're just going to cross over and we're going to tie a knot on the other side of the wire loop here, or on the other side of the tassel into the wire loop would be a better way to describe that. So I'm just making a little loop and tying a knot. Now my thread is positioned right where I want it to be to make my next tassel. Now yes, this kind of makes the loop messy, but you're not going to see the loop. I'd rather be able to place my tassels right where I want them. I'm not going to worry about what my thread looks like on the wire loop. It's going to be covered. We're going to do the same tassel again. So we're going to pick up 4 11-0 seed beads in bronze, 4 11-0 seed beads in gold, and then one of the drops, one of the tulips. I'm going to drop it down like this. Position it where I want it, pick up an 11-0, drop it down, and then I'm going to go around the 11-0 and into, you see the mistake I made? Yes, I bet you guys do. The 8-0 seed bead. I woke up at 3:30 this morning. It's now about 7 this morning. I just could not sleep well, so I'm kind of tired now, and I apologize. Picked up an 8-0, and then a tulip, and then my 11-0. And I'll drop this down. I am going to go around the 11-0 and into all of these beads. And I'm just going to do this nice and slowly. Get up through all the beads. And then I'm going to go through the loop. So you can see I'm kind of supporting myself with my finger behind the loop here, and then I'm going to pull my needle through. Now I'm going to tie a knot around the loop. Okay, I just want to make sure nothing's bunched, adjust my tension. And now I'm going to move into making some shorter flowers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up, I believe this time it's going to be 4 11-0s again of both colors, so 8 11-0s all together. So 4 bronze, 4 gold, and then I am not going to pick up a drop. I'm just going to pick up an 8-0, and then I'm going to pick up a flower, and drop this down. And I need another 11-0 on there. So I'll pick up the 11-0. And then I'm going to go around that 11-0 into the rest of the beads. Oh, it looks like I've got a silver one on. Oh, maybe not. It's just the light. Okay. So just keep going through all of them. Well, come here, little bead. And then I'm going to go up underneath the loop. I'm going to balance it all in my hand and hold it together here. And then, again, I'm going to tie a knot. Just to keep that right in the position I want it in. Now, I'm going to do one more. So I'm going to go underneath the loop. I'm going to tie another knot to position my thread exactly where I want that tassel. And I am going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to pick up 4 11-0s in bronze, 4 11-0s in gold, my 8-0, and my flower, and my 11-0. Drop this down. And then I'm going to go back up through all of these beads again, ignoring the 11-0 on the end. I think my needle is bent. It's being difficult to pass through. Then I'm going to again hold on to it, pull everything up, make sure it's secure, and tie a knot, passing back underneath this loop. Now, I need to put 2 more on this side, but as I work my way back over, I am going to make shorter tassels with just drops. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads in bronze and 3 11-0 seed beads. Is that what I'm doing for sure? And yes, 3 11-0 seed beads in gold. And then I'm just going to pick up a drop and then an 11-0. So this is what I have, just like this. And I'm positioned right here in between these 2 tassels. So I'm going to drop this down. And I'm going to go back up through all the beads again, ignoring the 11-0 on the end of the drop. Pass all the way through. And then tie a knot just to position my tassel. Come on, you. Now I want to make sure it's going to hang kind of in front of the others. So I just kind of reposition everything several times just to make sure that things are looking the way I want. Now, of course, it's a little uneven because I haven't put the 2 flowers over here. So as I've worked my way over, now I'm right here in between these 2 tassels, and I'm going to do another of my shorter drops here. So I'm going to pick up 3 11-0s in bronze and 3 in gold and a tassel. And an 11-0 and go around it. then up underneath the loop, pull it through, and tie a knot. Now, after each one of these, make sure you kind of adjust your tension so that your tassel isn't squished or weird or sticking out funny or anything like that. I've tied my knot. I'm going to work over to the other side here so I'm just going past this flower, and I'm going to tie a knot to position for my next drop. Okay, so just to keep this from being 900 years long, I'm going to go ahead and do another drop exactly the same way, move myself over between these two and do another drop. And then we'll be back. Okay, so I've just put my fourth drop on in between the flowers. Now I am between this flower strand and this one because I've just put this drop on. I'm going to go on the other side of the long flower here, and I'm going to tie a knot onto my loop to position my thread where I want it, and then I'm going to make two more of the short flowers. So we did 4 11-ohs in bronze, 4 11-ohs in gold, and then an 8-oh, and then a flower, and then an 11-oh. And I set this down nice and neat, and I'm going to bring this up. Now the reason we're being so precise with this is that you basically know what your tassel is going to look like if you strategically place them. So I want them to look really nice when it dangles down, so this is why I'm doing it this way. Now I'm going to go back up through all my beads, just like I've been doing, nice and slowly, up through the back of the loop, pull this through, arrange it, and then I'm going to tie a knot. And stab myself in the process, because you know you got to do that every now and then, just to remind you you're using a needle, I guess. I'm sorry, my phone is going nuts. I don't know what's going on over there. Okay, so I've tied my knot. I'm going to tie one more on the other side of this flower I just made and make one more flower. So I'm going to do that off camera. Once I've made that other flower exactly the same as this one in the position I'm in, I will tie a knot and we'll come back and continue. Okay, so I have finished this last tassel, and I came up through, tied another knot on the outside of the little fringe here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to travel back down into this fringe, tie a little knot, and get rid of this thread here. So I'm going to go down halfway through this fringe, through the first 4 seed beads here. I got around my wire here. Sorry guys. Let's try to do this again. There we go. And now that I'm halfway through my fringe, I'm going to go between these 2 beads. I'm just going to go underneath them. Then I'm going to pull my thread between them. Oh, let me get in camera here. I want to get close so you can see what I'm doing, but I've gone through the first 4, And now I'm coming out right between the beads. I'm going to position my thread and loop it right between those two beads. I apologize for getting out of camera, but you can see what I'm doing here. And then I'm just going to pull a knot down between those two beads so that I have a knot on the thread inside there. And then I'm going to continue coming down through the rest of the strand. Now we're tied off up here, we're tied here, and now we're just going to go down into the flower. Then I'm going to go up through this 11-0 seed bead. Now I'm going to cut my thread and I'm going to leave a decent sized tag here. It's about a 1/2 inch, something like that. Let me see, let me measure it just because I know you can't tell on camera. So yeah, it's about a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to get my lighter here and I'm just going to melt this in by getting the flame close. It'll create a blob and that will knot that off very well for us. Now, you may, yes, see it, but you're not going to see it that well. And no one's going to be sticking their head, you know, underneath your fringe and looking at it. So it should be just fine. Now I have got my tail kind of tangled in here, so let me untangle it. I'm going to do the same thing with this tail. So I've left a nice, decent size of tail too. I'm just going to get my flame close and just gently melt it in. I don't want to light it on fire per se, but I want to melt it in so that it creates another little knot there. Then I'm going to grab my tassel and just kind of arrange the way I think it looks good here. I'm going to lay it out so I can see where my pieces are, my pieces and parts, and just arrange it nicely. These little drops are kind of in front of the flowers, like this. You can pull them wherever you want them to be. You could also put a smaller drop on either side of the flowers if you want to, like that. And then I am just going to place my bead cap on right over all of that and arrange it in my bead cap a little bit. Until it looks like I want it to look, like this. And then, excuse me, I apologize, I'm having some congestion and throat issues this morning because of allergies, so I apologize. Okay, so now I have it pretty much positioned the way I want it, and it's gonna move around anyway, but I've got it kind of the way I want it. I'm going to grab my round nose pliers, place it right on top of that bead cap, and kind of push down on it so I have no slack. And again, I'm going to bring the long length of wire over the back of my plier as I hold my plier flat and parallel to the bead mat. Then I'm going to turn my plier up and down, and then I'm going to bring the wire over the top. As I do that, I'm going to begin to turn my wrist so it is now parallel to the bead mat again. Draw that excess piece of wire underneath the plier, and then I'm going to let go, and I'm going to grab a flat nose pair of pliers and hold on to this. I'm going to switch hands just because I do this better with my right hand, and I'm going to begin to coil around this, and my bead cap will kind of move down as I do this, and that way I can tighten everything on here. I'm not going to do a really precise, perfect coil. I'm going to come back up over the top of it. It's pretty precise and nice and clean the first time around, but then I'm going to come back up maybe twice. And then I'm just going to cut that off really close. And then this time I want to tuck it in nicely because this is exposed. So there. And I'm just going to fix my tassel. Until it looks the way I want it to. Then of course it's always going to move around. But at least I know that I've placed the beads on there to the point where they'll kind of be evenly distributed. No matter how they lay, they're going to be somewhat evenly distributed. And what I don't understand is why this one seems so much longer. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe I went a few more beads with the longer one. But of course you can make your tassels as long as you want. This is all just, you know, technique, so you can mess with it and make it how you want to make it. So there you have that. Now we're going to get ready to string the upper part. So what I want you to do is grab your soft flex medium, go ahead and cut about 24 inches, which I know seems very long, but it gives us a lot of room to work with. My original necklace, I will measure and tell you exactly how long it is, and then we will go ahead and cut our bead stringing wire and string that up. Okay. So I actually cut 22 inches of beading wire. My necklace is 18 inches long. So if you want a longer necklace, of course, you can bead more, you can cut more wire. That's fine. Leave yourself a few extra inches, of course, to do your crimping at the end. Now, one note about the tassels here. The reason this tassel looks so much looser and longer is because my loop was bigger on my wire. So every time I make a tassel, it's always different. So just make your loop a little bit bigger if you want them to be a little bit looser and more flowing, because they won't be as tight in the loop as this one, and they won't go as deep into the bead cap as this one has if you like this looser look. Both of them I think are pretty, and I'm not disappointed with it, but that is why they are different. Even though I used exactly the same amount of beads and positioning, it's different simply because of the fact that the loop was bigger. So now let's get this one in focus here. I'm keeping the other one by me so that I can remember exactly how I beaded that one. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pick up 4 11-0 seed beads, and I'm using my gold color onto my, actually I'm going to pick up an 8-0 first. So I'm using a bronze 8-0, and then I'm going to pick up 4 11-0 gold seed beads onto my wire. And I'm going to bring this down to the middle of my wire. So I'm just going to put the two ends together here and bring these down to the middle. Then I'm going to slide on my pendant. So I'm just going to put a little loop on, and I'm going to let it go over the 11-0s, just like this. So you want to make sure you make a loop big enough to go over 11-0s, but not really big, because you don't want it to slide over the 8-0s. So just kind of keep that in mind too. And now that I have that there, I am going to put another 8-0 on the other side. So you'll have 8-0, 4 11-0s, 8-0. And then I'm going to position my wire again, and I'll have to do this several times to make sure I stay centered. And it doesn't matter at this point, the 11-0s are going to move around, that's okay. Then I'm going to start with a drop bead. I'll get some drops out here. And I'm going to open my lantern beads because I haven't cut that strand open yet. So let me get some of these out. and we're going to need 4 of our flowers. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put a drop, and I'm going to put the narrow side on the wire first, and I'm going to drop it down on both sides. I'm going to do the same thing. Let's see, narrow side, Gina. Ta-da! So let me put this one back on as I fumble my way through here. And then I'll put one on this side. And I'm going to back off just a little so that my hands don't blur the camera so badly. And then I'll just recenter my wire somewhat. It's not going to stay perfect yet. It's going to keep moving. Then I'm going to do 11-0 and a lantern bead and an 11-0 and then another drop, and this time I'm going to put the drop on the fat side first. That way the 2 fat sides are basically next to each other and the 2 narrow out. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'll pick up an 8-0, a lantern, an 8-0, and the fat side of my drop. Then I'm going to pick up a tulip, but first I want 11-0 seed bead, so I'm going to use my little gold 11-0, and then I'm going to drop a tulip, and then I'm going to drop an 8-0, and then a tulip. So this tulip I'm facing with the narrow side towards the center of my necklace, and this one with the fat side towards the center of my necklace, so that they make this nice little thing. So now I am just going to center this again, and I'm going to bead one side so you can see the pattern, and then we will do the other side. So I'm going to put the ends together, center my necklace. I'm going to grab this little clip, and I'm going to clip it over here just to kind of hold things steady for me. And I'm going to start the rest of my pattern here. So I'm going to pick up another 11-0 seed bead, and then I'm going to pick up a drop, and I am going to put it on fat side first, and then an 8-0, and then a lantern bead, and an 8-0, and then, oops, that's an 11-0. Duh, Gina. I really need to sleep, guys. I really need to sleep. And then I'm going to do a lantern bead. And I should have had the fat side first on the, well, let me see. Yeah, I've changed that. So this one's going to be the fat side first. And then I'm going to put on an 8-0, a lantern, an 8-0, and then I'm going to do the narrow side, and yeah, and then I'm just going to put on an 11-0. I messed up my original, guys. That's why I'm kind of confused. I have one little gold seed bead on here, and I don't know why, but that's okay. So I'm going to go with 11-0, or excuse me, 8-0. 8-0s from this point out. I dropped an 11-0, but I need an 8-0. And then a lantern, and then an 8-0, and then I am going to do a drop, And I'm going to go narrow side, and then I'm going to do an 8/0 and a drop, and then I'm going to do an 8/0 and 3 lantern beads. And I will show you this. I'll pause on it so you can see exactly what I've done. If you want it to be exactly the same, if you don't, just bead it the way you want to bead it. There is no right or wrong here. You have artistic license to do whatever you want to do. So I've got 3 lanterns and then an 8/0, and then I'm going to drop a drop bead with the narrow side first, and then an 8/0, and then the fat side of my drop, and then an 8/0, 3 lantern beads, boy, an 8/0 and a drop with the narrow side, an 8/0, a drop on the fat side, and then an 8/0 and 3 lanterns. And then I'm going to do 5 8/0s. This narrows the back, allows your toggle to work well, and gives a little extra length without having to use more beads. So this is what I have. I'm going to zoom in and get you close so you can see. And as I said, you do not have to do it exactly the same way I have if I confused you a little with it. Otherwise, if you want to, then just go ahead and pause here. Here's the center of my necklace. This is where we started. So your entire side should look like this. Go ahead and pause now. Okay. So now that I have done this, I'm going to take my clip off. I'm going to recenter everything because it's all over the place. So I'm going to recenter it. And now I'm going to put my clip on the side I finished. And then I am going to use this side as reference and go ahead and bead this side. And I'll do it exactly the same way I did this side, and then we will be back and we will put the ends on the necklace. Okay, so now I have strung both sides. I'm going to show you both necklaces so you can see your color scheming for the bag you're using, and you can copy it if you would like. Now what I was talking about, the 11/0 on this one, I put an 11/0 in gold right here, and then I did the rest in 8/0s, and I just didn't do that on this one. I just put 8/0s. So you can see the stringing and the colors. Pause for a moment. And then you can string whichever one you have according to this pattern if you like it. Otherwise, do it just the way you want to. Now, let's go ahead and put the ends on this necklace. So, I'm going to take my clip off, and I'm going to make sure that they are centered nicely by putting the two ends of the wire together. I'm going to clip off one side. I'm going to push this side down, make sure that there's no slack in the center of my necklace, and then I'm going to grab a couple of crimp beads out here. Give me a second. I should have opened this. my brain is really befuddled, guys. I shouldn't do tutorials when I haven't slept because I'm just not so great, and this lid isn't coming off. Come off. Okay. It seems like when you're tired, everything argues with you too. So now I have got a crimp tube, and I'm going to slide it on here. Then I'm going to grab my clasp, and I'm going to put the wire through the loop of the clasp. Move you in a little closer here. Make sure everything is tight, so I'm just pushing down on the beads, and then I'm going to go back through my clasp, or through the crimp tube, and then into 3 of the 8/0 seed beads right underneath it here, and exit those. Then I'm going to grab the half of my loop here of wire that is stable. The other side moves, and I'm going to pull that other side. I'm going to keep holding on to the stable side until I can't anymore, and then I'm going to hold on to these seed beads, and I'm just going to pull this down tight. And I'm going to pull it very tight, no slack here. And then I'm going to make sure there's no slack down in the center of my necklace, and I'm just going to cut this off. Then I am going to push down on the crimp tube just a little bit. This way that'll draw in any excess cording that is coming through the 11/0 seed beads or the 8/0 seed beads here, and it will also give me a loop that my toggle can move around on. Now I'm going to grab my crimping tool, and I'm going to position this. Now this is not stable once you cut it like this, so make sure you don't tug on it or do anything weird. Just be very gentle with it. Place your crimping tool in between the 2 wires. So in your second divot there's a little like groove. Make sure that groove goes between the 2 wires, imagining where the center is on that crimp tube, and squeeze. Now you have a nice crimp with each side of the wire encased in a little tube. Now you're going to place your crimp tool in again, and you're going to make sure that you're placing in the first divot on the crimping tool, the one closest to the tip of the handle here, and you place that in sideways so the 2 tubes are touching the crimp tool, and you squeeze just like that. Now you have a nice crimp. You have your wire reinforced through here, and you can't see it, and that's why I do this technique, because that way there's no little cut off pokies in the back or anything like that. And now I am going to grab the other side of my necklace. I'm going to make sure that my pendant is sliding over those 4 seed beads in the middle and not between them. And then I am going to grab another crimp tube, and I'm going to slide that on my wire. And then I am going to grab the other half of my clasp, put it through, and then back through the crimp tube, and 3 8/0 seed beads. I'm going to exit that third 8/0 seed bead, hold on to the side that's stable, pull this tight. Let me get my clasp out of there. Pull this tight until I can't hold on to it anymore. Then I hold on to the beads and pull this tight as I can get it. And then get my flush cutter, cut the wire, and then I just push down the crimp tube to where I draw in any excess wire, and just kind of make sure I have the same size loop on both sides here. And then again, in the divot closest to the handle, I place my crimp tube in, squeeze, Now I've encased both wires. Now I place it in sideways in the divot closest to the tip of the handle, or to the tip of the tool, and squeeze. So if you look on your crimp tube or your crimp tool, you can see that you have a divot here, a little like round circle. On this side you have a little groove, and then on the first divot here closest to the tip, it's just round. So those are what I am talking about when I tell you which groove to use. Okay, so now I have my necklace, and I can arrange it, make it prettier, but right now, let's see, yeah, I'll arrange it just to lay it out so you can see what it looks like. And then we're gonna go ahead and make a pair of earrings and be done with this. So that one goes over there, and basically I'll arrange them really pretty and make sure that they look nice so you can see exactly everything. Right now I've been messing with it and it's kind of goofy, so anyway, there's my tassel, just like that. And they do kind of fall where you want them to. You can arrange them a little bit, but there's the tassel on that one, there's the tassel on that one, and again, the difference is the size of loop I made to go into my bead cap. So if you want them looser, then you will make a bigger loop, test it in your bead cap to make sure it goes in nicely. But the reason these are tighter is because they drew in deeper because my loop was smaller, plus they were tighter on my loop as I put them on because I had a smaller loop. So that's the difference. Now I'm going to get things ready and we will make a pair of earrings. Okay, so we're going to make a pair of earrings that looks like this. And this one, I put a gold 11-0 on the end. So, oh well, you know, I'm tired. I'm just so tired. Anyway, this is what we're going to do. So, what you need to do is grab an ear wire, and you are going to use your needle and thread again. So put a couple feet of thread onto your needle and then just go through the loop. Make sure your loop on your ear wire is very tightly closed. So if you need to, you can just grab your pair of pliers and lift it a little and shimmy it into place. These particular ear wires close pretty tightly, so I'm not too worried about it. So now I have drawn my thread through. I'm leaving myself a fairly decent length of tail here. So I've got about 4 inches of tail, and I'm going to tie a knot. And I'm going to tie another knot just to secure this. And make sure you leave your 4-inch tail on there. Just kind of push it to the side. Bring this down to the center here. And then you're going to pick up a bead cap onto your needle and a lantern bead. And drop it down. Now if you don't have a bead cap, just pick up your lantern. That's fine. You can do it without it. And then we're going to make a tassel. So we're going to pick up 4 11-0 seed beads, and I'm using bronze, and then I'm going bronze, not brawn, and then 4 11-0 in gold, and then I'm going to pick up a drop bead with the narrow side first, and drop this down. Then I'm going to pick up an 8-0 and one of my flowers, my tulip, and an 11-0. I'm then going to go back through all of these beads. So I'm going to ignore that 11-0. I'm going to come back through all of the beads, just slowly and gently, making sure I don't miss any. And this is a long span, so if you need to go out and come back in, that's fine too. I'm going to come up through this lantern bead, I'm going to come up through the bead cap, and I'm going to go through the clasp here. I hope I was in frame. Anyway, all I'm doing is coming up through the beads just like we did on the tassel on the necklace, on all of the tassels. Okay, so here I am. Now I've come through my ear wire. I'm just going to go back down into the bead cap and just the lantern bead right there. Just like this. I'm going to pull this through. And make sure everything is pulled up tight. So if you have to, just loosen that 11-0 and then pull your tail thread a little here. Pull your working thread and make sure everything is nice and tight. Now to secure this tail, we are going to go ahead and make this tassel first, and then we will sew this tail back in. But make sure it's tight in the process here so that everything is nice and tight up against your ear wire. And let's make our second tassel. So we're going to pick up 3. This time we're going to make it shorter. So we're going to pick up 3 bronze 11-0s. Then we're going to pick up 3 gold 11-0s. And we're going to pick up an 8-0. Or excuse me, we're going to pick up a drop first and then an 8-0. Narrow side of the drop, 8-0. Then a flower and an 11-0. And drop this down. Then we're going to go around the 11-0, back up into all the beads, all the way up to the top, all the way through the lantern bead, and then through the bead cap, and then through the back of the ear wire loop here, just like this, and pull this down, just like that. Now, we're going to secure this thread by going back down into the bead cap. So we're going around the ear wire, back down into the bead cap, all the way down into these beads. We're going to exit right above the drop bead here. Then we're just going to go around it by putting the beetle, put your beading needle behind the beads, and then situate your thread between the beads so that you can create a loop between the 11-0 and the drop bead, and then pull that loop into a knot down between the beads, and then go into your drop bead and go into your flower, and then go into the 11-0 on the bottom and back up the 8-0 here. Let's tie a knot here. So just behind the beads again, tie a knot. Make sure that loop is positioned between your beads or you're going to have a knot on top of them. Right there. And then I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to cut that off. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put the needle on this one, the thread that you left, the 4-inch tail. Put your needle on there. Go back down, go around the clasping, so you're around it one more time. So I'm going through the clasping, and then I'm going to go down into the lantern bead, all the way down to the end of this entire strand here. Then I'm going to go through the 11-0 here. I'm going to pull the thread through. I'm going to cut about a 1/2 inch of thread left, leave a 1/2 inch of thread, and then I'm going to make a blob on the end here by melting it down, and it blobs right down on the end there, and now it's secure. You can't really see it. It looks really pretty, so don't worry about that. And no one's going to stick their head up underneath the flower and look at your bead, so it should be fine. It looks just fine. So that's how you will make your earrings. We're going to go ahead and make one more off camera, and then I'll come back and show you the entire sets, both of them. Okay, so as you can see, I have finished my second earring, and with my sleep-deprived, befuddled mind, I made them a little differently than my original design. So you can see that this one has a little bit longer dangle on this side, a little bit shorter. These have a little bit shorter, but not as much as these. That's because on the shorter strand, instead of putting 3 bronze 11-0s and 3 gold 11-0s, I put 3 bronze and 2 gold on this set. So that's why there's a little bit more of a difference and a little bit more of a flow than on this one. So you can see the slight differences from design to design, but that's because I'm half asleep. Anyway, I hope that you like these necklaces. I think they turned out really pretty. Even with the slight differences, I still like them quite a bit. So I'm pretty happy with the whole situation here. I'm going to get you in a little closer so you can see the dangles and the earrings. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please considering subscribing and hitting that like button. And I promise next time I will actually sleep all night before I get up at 3:30 in the morning and try to make a tutorial. Okay? See y'all. Have a good day. Bye-bye.